What is consciousness and where it comes from? A Buddhist perspective. Chapter 1. Consciousness. A river, not a rock. We often carry this quiet feeling that there is someone inside. Someone who sees, hears, thinks, remembers. A me, solid, continuous. But have you ever looked closely at that me and asked, where exactly is it? When you say, I am sad, where is that I? Does it stay the same from yesterday to today? The Buddha invited us to look right there, not in the sky, not in books, but into our own moment-to-moment experience. He taught that what we call consciousness is not a fixed thing or a hidden soul. It is not like a rock you can point to and say, this is who I am. Instead, it's more like a river, flowing, changing, never the same from one moment to the next. In Pali, the word for consciousness is vijnana. It simply means knowing or awareness. Not a thinker behind the thought, but the activity of being aware. The Buddha described 6 kinds of this awareness, each one arising when a sense meets its object. When the eye meets a color or form, eye consciousness arises. When the ear meets a sound, ear consciousness arises. The same with smells, tastes, physical touch, and mental objects like thoughts or memories. Each one gives rise to a moment of knowing. These are not separate beings living inside us. They are events. Conditions meet, awareness arises. The moment passes, then another. This is not just theory. You can see it any time. Close your eyes for a second and notice what happens. A sound enters the ear. A knowing of the sound appears. Then it disappears. A new thought comes in. Then it's gone too. The mind never stays still. This is what the Buddha called anicca, or impermanence. He taught that all conditioned things, including consciousness, arise, change, and pass away. They don't last. Like waves on water, they form, move, dissolve. Because of this constant change, Buddhism teaches there is no solid self hiding behind these processes, no permanent me who owns them. This is the meaning of anatta, non-self. The Buddha reminded us that what we usually call I is just a collection of ever-shifting experiences. Consciousness is not a person. It is not a container holding memories or emotions. It is a happening, dependent on causes. Imagine for a moment that you feel anger. You might say, I am angry. But what is really there? There is a bodily tension, maybe heat in the chest. There are fast thoughts, a story forming. But all of this changes. Sometimes the anger disappears when the situation changes. Sometimes it vanishes when you pause and breathe. The knowing of anger, that's consciousness. The anger itself is something else. A mental state, what Buddhism calls sankhara, or mental formation. These two are often confused, but they are different. Consciousness is not what you feel. It's the knowing that feeling is present. So when we look closely, what seems like a permanent self becomes a series of short-lived events. The Buddha didn't say this to confuse us. He said it because seeing this clearly is the beginning of freedom. When we stop holding on to the idea of a fixed me, we begin to understand life more honestly. Things change. Moods rise and fall. Experiences come and go. And in that seeing, there is peace. This peace is not something magical. It comes from understanding how things really are. That what we call the mind is not one solid thing, but a stream of knowing shaped by conditions, like a river that never stops flowing. And just like a river, it cannot be owned. You cannot pick up a handful of water and say, "This is my true self." It will slip through your fingers. Yet this river of consciousness is not random. It's shaped. And how it flows, that's something we'll begin to look at more closely. Chapter 2. Karma, Seeds Shaping Our Experience. Why do different people react so differently? Why do we have natural talents or deep-seated fears? Buddhism points to karma, the seeds we plant. But where are these seeds stored between lives? There's a moment that many of us know well. You're walking in a peaceful place. Nothing has happened. Yet suddenly, a wave of sadness rises in your chest. No story, no reason. Just a cloud passing through the sky of the mind. Why does this happen? According to the Buddha's teaching, these moments are not random. They're not signs of a hidden self either. They are the ripening of old seeds, planted long ago through our thoughts, speech, and actions. The Buddha called these seeds kamma, what we now often pronounce as karma. Karma, simply put, is intentional action. Not every action is karma. Only those driven by intention, whether wholesome or unwholesome. These actions leave a trace, not in the body, not in the brain, but in the flow of consciousness itself. Like dropping ink into water, they leave color. Over time, these traces shape how we feel, think, act, and even how we're born. This might sound mysterious, but it's not very far from our everyday experience. Imagine someone who always reacts with kindness, even under pressure. That reflex wasn't born in a single moment. It was watered by hundreds of choices, sometimes big, often small. And the same is true for our habits of fear, jealousy, patience, or generosity. The mind remembers. In early Buddhist teachings, this memory is not a conscious one. We don't have to remember what we did in a past life. Still, our actions keep echoing. They influence our tendencies, our reactions, even the basic structure of our personality. In modern terms, some may speak of conditioning or psychological imprints. But the Buddha spoke clearly about the power of intention and how it shapes not only this life, but what comes after. Now, a deep question naturally arises. If these karmic seeds are so powerful, where are they kept? After all, the body dies. The brain stops working. Yet consciousness continues, carrying these seeds with it. In the Mahayana tradition, especially in the Yogacara school, there is a teaching known as alaya vijñāna. The word alaya means storehouse or home, and vijñāna means consciousness. So this is the storehouse consciousness. You can think of it like a quiet ocean beneath the surface waves. Above, our thoughts, feelings, and sense impressions rise and fall. But deep below, this subtle stream holds the seeds of all past actions. Not in the way a hard drive stores files, more like how a field holds the memory of every seed dropped into its soil. When conditions are right, something will grow. Alaya vijñāna is not something we can detect with ordinary awareness. It works quietly. Every time we act, speak, or think with intention, a seed is planted. Some seeds stay buried for a long time. Others ripen quickly. And when they do, we experience the result. Maybe as a mood, a habit, or a situation we find ourselves in. It's important to remember, even this deep storehouse is not a self. It's not a soul. It doesn't remain unchanged. It's still part of the conditioned flow. It changes as seeds are planted, watered, and burned away through insight. It's not a thing that travels from life to life. It's more like a current that keeps flowing, carrying traces of the past into each new moment. This is what allows the continuation of consciousness even after death. The Buddha taught that the stream of mind, carried by karma, does not end with the death of the body. Instead, it continues. And as one life ends, another begins. In early Buddhist texts, this moment of new life is marked by patisandhi vijnana, the rebirth consciousness. It's the first spark of awareness in a new body, conditioned by karmic seeds ripening from past lives. That first moment already carries potentials. Just as a tree begins from a seed shaped by its parents, a new life begins with tendencies shaped by past actions. But none of this is predetermined. Karma is not fate. It's not punishment. It's simply cause and effect. Old seeds may ripen, but we're planting new ones all the time. This is why mindfulness and ethical living are so central in the Buddha's path. By acting with care, we shape the future. By understanding the flow of our mind, we weaken the seeds of suffering and strengthen the seeds of wisdom and peace. So next time an emotion arises, you don't need to chase it or fight it. Just notice it. Breathe. It may be an old seed opening, and every moment you stay aware, you are planting something new. The Buddha reminded us that freedom doesn't come from trying to erase the past. It comes from understanding it, and from realizing that even the deepest patterns, stored in the quietest corners of consciousness, can be transformed. Because even the storehouse is not a prison. It is always changing, and change means possibility. Chapter 3. Consciousness, Buddhist and Worldviews. Consciousness is one of the oldest and most difficult questions humanity has ever asked. Scientists study it in laboratories. Philosophers debate it in classrooms. Religions around the world offer their own answers. But despite all the thinking, the mystery stays. Who is it that sees, hears, thinks, and feels? Where does this knowing come from? The Buddha didn't try to solve the mystery with theories. He observed directly. What he saw was that consciousness is not a fixed thing. It's not an object inside us. It's more like a flickering light, always changing, always depending on something else to arise. In Buddhism, this light is not one single thing but many. 6 types of awareness that depend on the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. This teaching may sound simple, but when you look deeper, it's very different from how most people understand the mind. Let's start with the scientific view. Many modern scientists look at consciousness as something the brain produces. In this view, your awareness is a result of neurons firing in your head. It's a side effect of biology. If the brain gets damaged, consciousness changes. If the brain stops, consciousness stops. This view has its strengths. It's based on careful observation of physical processes. But it also runs into a problem. It cannot fully explain subjective experience. You can measure brain activity. You can scan someone's thoughts. But how do you explain the feeling of being you? Of seeing a sunset? Of missing someone? Scientists call this the hard problem of consciousness. Where does the inner experience come from? Why do neurons make feelings? Now compare this with the Buddhist view. The Buddha didn't separate the mind from the body, but he didn't reduce it to the brain either. He taught that consciousness arises dependent on conditions. For example, Seeing only happens when there is an I, a visible form, and light. If one of those conditions is missing, seeing cannot occur. It's the same with hearing, tasting, touching, thinking. They are all events, not things you own, but activities that happen under the right conditions. And they don't last. The Buddha pointed out that each moment of knowing arises, fades, and is followed by another. What you call your mind is more like a flame dancing in the wind, beautiful, changing, impossible to hold. Western philosophers have long wondered about this too. Some, like Descartes, believe there is a soul, a thinker behind the thoughts. Others, like David Hume, looked into the mind and couldn't find any fixed self at all. Just thoughts, feelings, impressions. Strangely enough, this second view comes closer to the Buddhist insight. According to the Buddha's teaching, there is no permanent thinker behind the thoughts, no eternal watcher behind the eyes, just processes unfolding. This is what anatta means, not that we don't exist at all, but that the self we imagine is not something fixed or solid. It's built from changing parts. The sense of I is a pattern, not a person. Now, let's look at another path, the religious view from Hinduism. In Hindu philosophy, there's a concept called Atman, a pure, unchanging self that continues life after life and is one with the universal spirit, Brahman. This self is seen as eternal, unchanging, and divine. The Buddha saw this teaching in his time, but he took a different direction. He noticed that whatever you observe, thoughts, feelings, even the deepest layers of awareness, they all change. If something changes, it cannot be truly permanent. If it arises from causes, it cannot be the ultimate reality. This includes even the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness we spoke about before. In some Buddhist traditions, this is described as a deep, quiet stream where karmic seeds are held. It carries the momentum from life to life, but even this is not eternal. It is conditioned. It is shaped by causes. And so, it is also not a permanent self. Here lies one of the key differences between Buddhism and many other systems. The Buddha didn't focus on explaining what consciousness is in some final cosmic sense. He focused on how it works, and how that understanding can lead to peace. He taught that all levels of consciousness, from the surface thoughts to the deep karmic layers, arise through conditions. They are empty of a fixed self, and they are impermanent. This view is not just an idea, it's a mirror. When you look into it, you start to see your suffering more clearly, and you start to understand how to let go. When people ask, then who is living this life? Who is being reborn? The Buddha gently pointed back to the stream. He showed that this stream flows not because of a soul, but because of craving and ignorance. And if those causes are removed, the stream stops. Not in a tragic way, but like a flame going out when there's no more fuel. Peaceful, complete. So, what makes the Buddhist view of consciousness unique? It's not the vocabulary. It's not the layers of mind or the terms like vijnana or alaya. What makes it unique is the goal. The Buddha didn't try to solve consciousness to win a debate. He explored it to understand suffering, to show that what we call me is not what we think it is, and to offer a way out. He taught that when we see clearly how consciousness depends on conditions, and how those conditions include karma, craving, and ignorance, then we begin to understand what freedom really means. Not as something outside us, but as something that becomes possible the moment we stop clinging to what is not truly ours. And so, the question is not, what is consciousness, as an abstract puzzle? The deeper question is, how are we using this moment of knowing? Are we feeding habits that keep the mind circling, or are we starting to wake up? The Buddha reminded us that the answer is not in theories. It's in direct experience. In how we meet this very breath, this very thought, this moment, just as it is. Chapter 4. What has consciousness? Beings, plants, cosmos. When we hear the word consciousness, we naturally think of humans, of thoughts, emotions, choices, and memories. But then we look around. A dog stares into our eyes. A tree sways in the wind. The stars shine in silence. And we begin to wonder, what really has consciousness? Is it only us? What about animals? What about the whole universe? Could it somehow be aware? According to the Buddha's teaching, consciousness, vijnana, is not a mystery floating in space. It's not a magical spark inside things. It's not everywhere, and it's not nowhere. It appears when the right conditions come together. That's all. For example, when the eye meets a visible form, and there's light and attention, then eye consciousness arises. When there's no eye, or no sight, or no contact between them, then that kind of consciousness doesn't arise. The same applies to sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. 6 types, 6 doors. The Buddha taught that these 6 kinds of consciousness are how living beings experience the world. Without these doors, there's no knowing. So the first question we often ask is, do animals have consciousness? Yes. According to Buddhism, animals are sentient beings, beings that feel, that know, and that suffer. A dog may not write poetry, but it feels pain, joy, fear, and connection. Its mind stream flows with the same basic elements as ours: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These 5 aggregates move and shift just like in a human. That's why compassion in Buddhism extends to all beings, not just humans, because suffering and the wish to be free from it are universal. What about plants? Do they have consciousness? This is where Buddhist teachings draw a clear line. Plants grow, respond to sunlight, react to damage, but they do not possess the 6 sense faculties required for vijnana to arise. They don't see forms, hear sounds, or think thoughts in the way sentient beings do. They are alive, yes, but not conscious. At least, not in the way the Buddha defined it. There is no eye consciousness, ear consciousness, or mind consciousness arising in a blade of grass. Even if science shows that plants react to stimuli, bending toward light, releasing chemicals when cut, this is not the same as awareness. According to the Buddha's teaching, consciousness arises only when conditions support it. And for a being to be reborn with consciousness, it must have karmic potential and a mental stream shaped by intentional acts. Plants do not accumulate karma in the same way sentient beings do. Now comes the big question. Is the universe itself conscious? Many people feel a kind of awe when they look at the stars or sit in nature. Some feel the presence of something greater, cosmic intelligence. Some modern thinkers suggest that maybe the universe is conscious, or that consciousness is built into the fabric of reality itself. But from a Buddhist perspective, the universe is not a person. It does not know in the way living beings know. It does not have intentions. It does not make decisions. The Buddha taught that awareness arises in independently originated ways, through causes and conditions. And those causes include sense faculties, mental formations, and karma. None of these are present in a rock, a planet, or a galaxy. This doesn't mean the universe is dead or meaningless. It just means that awareness, as we know it, is something very specific. It happens within beings, not in the universe as a whole. The moon doesn't gaze back. The wind doesn't understand. The cosmos moves with laws, not with thoughts. Sometimes people argue, but maybe if something is very complex, it becomes conscious. This is a tempting idea, that consciousness grows out of complexity, like a flower blooming from a tree. But in Buddhist thought, complexity alone doesn't create knowing. A robot can have thousands of sensors, yet no awareness. A computer can learn patterns, yet it doesn't suffer. There's no craving, no clinging, no fear of death. The Buddha reminded us that what we call mind or consciousness is not just the result of many parts. It's a flow born of karma, attention, and contact with the world through living faculties. Without those, there is no someone there, no awareness. So what does all this mean for us? It means consciousness is rare. It's precious. It's not floating in everything. It arises only when the right causes are there, and it ends when those causes fall away. This understanding helps us live with more care. It reminds us to treat sentient beings with respect, because they feel pain and joy just like we do. It also helps us see clearly where not to project. Not every moving thing is conscious. Not every system is aware. And not every form of life needs our pity or fear. Most of all, it shows us the nature of our own mind. That what we experience right now, seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, is not permanent. It's not a soul. It's not a fixed me. It's a series of arising and passing moments, flowing according to conditions. And when we see that, really see that, we begin to understand not just what has consciousness, but what it means to wake up from the illusion of being something solid in the stream. Chapter 5. Mindfulness. Watching reality, waking up. If consciousness is a stream shaped by karmic seeds, how do we find freedom? The Buddha taught that suffering begins with ignorance, not seeing things clearly. We don't see that thoughts, emotions, and even the sense of me arise from causes. Because of this, we cling, and this clinging keeps the stream of karma flowing. But the Buddha also taught that awareness can heal. Mindfulness means watching what happens in the body, in the mind, in our moment-to-moment experience, clearly, calmly, and without grasping. It's not about controlling the mind. It's about seeing it as it is. When we practice in this way, insight arises. We begin to see the three marks: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and the absence of a fixed self. The stream of consciousness becomes less personal, less tight. The seeds of karma lose their power when they're seen with wisdom. According to the Buddha's teaching, this is how the mind is purified, not by force, but by clarity. Wisdom doesn't suppress anything, it simply shines a light. In that light, the stream settles, the craving stops, and what remains is peace, not as an emotion, but as the end of struggle. This is Nibbana, not something far away, but the very nature of mind when it is no longer driven by ignorance. So, watching the mind, we wake up.